Lemuel Gulliver, a middle-aged man from New York, woke up in his dirty room and goes for his morning routine. His silly side comes out when he talks to his superhero toys on a shelf and sings in the shower. Gulliver is an employee of a newspaper firm in New York who delivers mail. On that day, he makes friends with a new worker called Dan. In the mailing department, Gulliver is his boss. They pick up their mail for the day and run into Darcy Silverman, a reporter who has been Gulliver's longtime crush. Since years ago, he's loved her, but he's never told her. Dan brings out a letter later that day saying that he got promoted as head of the mail department on his first day. Even though Gulliver has worked at the building for 10 years, no one there treats him with respect. Dan says Gulliver is too shy to talk and will never get ahead in life besides works in the mailroom. When Gulliver is leaving the office, he is upset and finds Darcy working late. He pulls up the nerve to ask her to go on a date, so he goes to her room. But his anxieties get the best of him, and he leaves after taking a random piece of paper from her desk. Darcy asks him if he wants to apply for a job writing about travel. Even though he's anxious, Gulliver agrees and has till the next day to post his travel journal. At home, he copies and pastes a number of blog posts from the internet. It is handed to Darcy at work the next day. Darcy is impressed with his writing and gives him a new job. She has asked him to go to the Bermuda Triangle and write an article about the stories of ships that go missing there. Gulliver agrees to make her happy. Darcy sets him up with a friend and a boat. Shortly after, Gulliver boards a plane to Bermuda, where a man awaits to take him up. He rents a boat for Gulliver and shows him how to use it. The trip is pretty easy because the boat does everything for you. Last but not least, Gulliver sets sail on his own for the Bermuda Triangle. The first few hours are fun for him because he reads how to build a robot magazines and drinks a lot of Coke. He goes to sleep right away. After a while, he wakes up to a huge wave in front of him. He quickly puts on a life jacket when the storm hits. The boat is moving rapidly through the water. When Gulliver turns around, he sees a huge sea tornado coming toward him. As the tornado moves, it pulls Gulliver and his boat right up into its eyes. Suddenly, all visuals vanish. Gulliver can't move his body when he opens his eyes. He is shocked to see some little men standing on top of his chest when he looks down. Their leader says his name is Edward Edwardian and he is the commander of the Lilliput. When the camera zooms out, we see a lot of tiny people gathered around Gulliver. He is stuck to the ground with small ropes and pieces of wood. Edward, the commander, calls Gulliver a beast. When Gulliver is scared and confused, he screams and easily gets free from the ropes. He tries to close his eyes because he thinks this is all a dream. Edward commands his men to bring down the beast. The soldiers put their hooks through Gulliver's pants and knock him out. Gulliver wakes up to find himself being dragged into the kingdom of Lilliput while strapped to a cart. The tiny people come out from their homes to see the beast. He comes into the royal palace and introduced to King Theodore, the king of Lilliput. Princess Mary, the king's daughter, feels sorry for Gulliver and asks Edward if the chains are really necessary. Edward tells Gulliver that he is a spy from Blefuscia, their enemy kingdom. To break the silence, Gulliver asks the king to tell him where he is. Jinx, King Theodore's secretary, tells him that he is in Lilliput, which is the world's best country. This makes Gulliver laugh, so he asks the cameraman who isn't around to show himself. Following scene shows Gulliver being locked up in a cave and he meets a prisoner named Horatio. Edward gave Horatio a life sentence because he tried to court Princess Mary. Edward approaches them again and listens to what they have to say, calling them lame ass. When an angry Edward says he will lock them up for life, Gulliver says that a lame ass is someone who is brave. Once he is satisfied with the answer, Edward leads both prisoners to a field where Gulliver can help him plow it. He uses a machine to hold Gulliver down. At that moment, 2 bells are rung from the palace, letting everyone know that Blefuscia has attacked. A fire has been started at the palace because they want to take Princess Mary hostage. Edward quickly goes to the palace and tells everyone not to save the princess because he plans to do it himself. Edward can't get to her in time, so Horatio asks Gulliver to do it. It's easy for Gulliver to beat the Blefuscian soldiers and save the princess. The king and his secretary, on the other hand, are stuck in the fire. Gulliver pees on the building because he is in a hurry. When he puts out the fire and saves King Theodore, everyone cheers. He and Horatio are freed from jail by the king, who praises Gulliver's bravery. He also asks everyone to join him for a feast at night to celebrate. Edward is very angry to see someone else getting praise for being brave. During the feast, Gulliver is asked by the king where he came from, and he states that he is from Manhattan. People think Gulliver is the mayor of Manhattan because he is the bravest person there. For the first time in his life, Gulliver feels like a hero, so he makes up the story that he was known as President the Awesome. Everyone, with the exception of Edward, believes him. The people of Lilliput build Gulliver a huge house the next day that has everything that he couldn't get in New York. Gulliver also orders them to build a theater big enough for everyone in the kingdom. Then he tells them that the drama about the Titanic sinking is the story of his life. Everyone is shocked by what a terrible life he has had. When Edward asks Gulliver how he was saved after drowning, he says that he was rescued. Horatio later asks Gulliver to help him make Princess Mary like him, and Gulliver agrees. They go to the palace, where Horatio talks to the princess. Behind Horatio, Gulliver sings the words to the song, Kiss, making him repeat them. The princess starts to like Horatio by the end, but Edward calls her because he has come to court her. Because Edward is the bravest person in the kingdom, they were meant to get married. Princess Mary doesn't like Edward, but she can't get rid of him. The search party finds the washed-up boat with the Coke cans somewhere else. Gulliver gets there and finds that his phone still works. 12 voicemails from Darcy have been left for him. It turns out that she is very angry about finding out that Gulliver copied someone else's work. In order to learn more about the Bermuda Triangle, she has to sail along the same path Gulliver took. So Gulliver stays in Lilliput for good. He doesn't want to go back to New York and face her there. Edward doesn't like his decision and tells the king that he doesn't trust Gulliver. The king ignores him, affirming his trust in Gulliver. Because he stayed, the king makes Gulliver the new general and knocks Edward down to vice-general. Edward turns off Lilliput's defenses because he is angry, which makes it easier for their enemies Blefuscia to attack. When the soldiers and king of Blefuscia see this, they decide to attack Lilliput right away. They come up to the kingdom on the water and fire cannonballs at Lilliput. Since Gulliver is the general, it is now his job to stop them. He jumps into the water with fear and starts to splash it around. Gulliver is too big for the cannonballs to hit, so they don't work. Finally, he emerges victorious over the Blefuscians and rescues Lilliput. All of Gulliver's wishes come true because of the people from Lilliput. To make him feel at home, they even built a model of Times Square. They change their clothes to match Gulliver's. Soldiers are in charge of cutting his hair and massaging him. Edward walks right into the princess's room one night. He claims that he has the right to enter at any time because he courted the princess. Princess finally tells him she doesn't love him and doesn't want him to follow her anymore. Frustrated, Edward goes to Blefuscia to ask their king for help. The Build Your Robot book that Gulliver had on the boat has been found by Edward's servants. According to the book, the king of Blefuscia will help him make a robot to fight Gulliver. A few days later, Gulliver is at the model Times Square when the palace bells start to ring, which means that someone is trying to take over. Before Gulliver can fight the tiny people, Edward controls a huge robot that appears in front of him, which surprises him. Edward challenges him to a duel. Gulliver has no choice but to agree. His pushes on the robot are not successful because it is much stronger than him. It grabs Gulliver by the pants and forces him to admit defeat. Finally, Gulliver admits that he lied about being president. He surprised the king and princess by betraying them. For his bad behavior, Edward punishes Gulliver by sending him to the island where we dare not go. A big little girl picks up Gulliver when he is left there. Yes, the island is home to giants. The girl keeps Gulliver in her Barbie house and dresses him in super girly pink clothes because she thinks he is a toy. Meanwhile, Darcy's body washes up on the shore of Lilliput. Since Gulliver told everyone that Darcy is his princess back home, Edward knows who she is and locks her up. After Gulliver's defeat, King Theodore and his queen were captured and are now in prison. As a result, Horatio chooses to go to the island where we dare not go to get Gulliver back. Despite being very small on the island, he makes it to Gulliver safely. There is also the body of a dead U.S. Air Force pilot in the little girl's dollhouse. Gulliver gets away with the parachute and flies back to Lilliput. He first tells Darcy that he likes her while they are together in prison. She lets him off the hook for copying the article and seems to be becoming more open with him. Edward has been challenged by Gulliver to a duel. He no longer wants to show how brave he is, he just wants to help Lilliput. They are ready to fight the next day when they stand in front of each other. He wants Edward to return the kingdom to King Theodore if he wins. But Edward will destroy the whole kingdom if he loses. They get into a fight, and Edward quickly beats him. Horatio jumps in to help him and gets inside the robot. From inside, he beats Edward and eventually turns off the robot's power. Now Gulliver easily beats it, and the crowd cheers. Even Darcy joins in the celebration of the win. Horatio is allowed to court Princess Mary because he is sufficiently brave. They finally kiss. Right then, Edward, who has gone completely crazy, takes the princess hostage. But the princess finally gets tired of Edward and beats the traitor up out of anger. After that, Darcy gives Gulliver his first kiss. The King of Blefuscia and Theodore are about to start a new war, but Gulliver stops them. Reads Edwin Starr's War, which helps to end the fighting between the island nations, and then he and Darcy go back to New York City on their fixed ship. After a few weeks, Gulliver quit his job in the mailroom and is now a travel writer. He and Darcy are very happy together. Gulliver has just returned from a trip, and the movie ends as he and Darcy hold hands and leave the office. Thank you for coming, and don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video.